Mark and Linda had been married for nearly 30 years. They had raised 2 children, built a home together, and navigated through the highs and lows of life as partners. Now, in their early 50s, they found themselves in a new phase, one where the kids had left home, careers were stabilizing, and they had more time together than ever before. Yet something felt different. Linda sat on the back porch one evening, watching the sunset. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, and the distant hum of cars passing on the street filled the air. Mark stepped out, holding 2 cups of tea, handing one to her. "You've been quiet lately," he said, sitting beside her. She sighed, "Just thinking about how much things have changed. The house feels empty." Mark nodded. "Yeah, it's strange, isn't it? For so many years it was all about the kid, work, responsibilities. Now it's just us." Linda glanced at him. "Do you ever feel like we've lost something?" Mark hesitated before answering. "Maybe. Or maybe we just need to find something new." Over the past few years, their relationship had subtly shifted. They were no longer the young couple who stayed up late talking about dreams and the future. Conversations had become more practical, about bills, family, and routine matters. Passion had been replaced by predictability. Linda loved Mark, but sometimes she wondered if they were still as connected as before. They had become comfortable, but comfort was not the same as closeness. Mark, too, had felt the distance, but had pushed it aside. He assumed this was normal. They weren't newlyweds anymore. Love at their age was supposed to be different. But now, sitting next to Linda in the quiet evening, he realized that different didn't have to mean distant. A week later, Mark came home with a surprise. He placed an envelope on the kitchen table. "What's this?" Linda asked, picking it up. "Open it." He smiled. She unfolded the paper inside and gasped. "A weekend trip?" Mark shrugged, a little nervous. "I figured we could use a change of scenery, just us. No distractions, no responsibilities. What do you think?" Linda's lips curved into a smile. "I think it's been a long time since we did something like this." That weekend they drove to a quiet lakeside cabin, away from the city noise. At first, it felt unfamiliar, almost awkward, but slowly, the rhythm of their connection returned. They took long walks, held hands, and talked about things they hadn't discussed in years. Hopes, regrets, silly memories from their youth. One evening after dinner, they sat on the dock, their feet dangling above the water. The sky was painted in hues of pink and orange, reflecting on the gentle ripples of the lake. Linda looked at Mark and reached for his hand. "I missed this," she whispered. Mark squeezed her hand. "Me too." Returning home, they both made a conscious effort to keep the connection alive. They started having date nights again. Sometimes it was a fancy dinner. Other times it was just a simple movie night at home. They also had deeper conversations about the future. "Retirement isn't that far off," Linda said one evening as they sat by the fireplace. "What do you think we should do?" Mark thought for a moment. "I want to travel, see places we always talked about but had never had time for." Linda smiled. "That sounds amazing." They also acknowledged the challenges that came with aging, health concerns, changing dynamics in their relationship, the reality of growing older together. But instead of letting those fears create distance, they chose to face them as a team. One morning, as Mark was reading the newspaper, Linda came up behind him and wrapped her arms around his shoulders. "You know," she said, resting her chin on his head, "I think I'm falling in love with you all over again." Mark chuckled and turned to kiss her cheek. "Good, because I plan to spend the rest of my life making sure you do." Love in their 50s wasn't the same as when they were young, but that didn't mean it was any less meaningful. It had evolved into something deeper, something built on decades of laughter, tears, and unwavering commitment. As they walked hand in hand down the street that evening, the world around them may have changed, but one thing remained the same: the love they shared, stronger than ever. And that, they both knew, was all that truly mattered. One evening, while flipping through a magazine, Linda came across an article about couples taking up new hobbies in midlife. She looked up at Mark and grinned. "What?" he asked, sensing she had an idea. "How about we try something new together?" she suggested. "Like dancing, painting, or even learning a new language." Mark chuckled. "Dancing, huh? You remember the last time we tried that?" Linda laughed, recalling how they once attempted salsa dancing and ended up stepping on each other's feet. "Okay, maybe something less dangerous." A few days later, they signed up for a cooking class. At first, Mark was skeptical. He had never been much of a chef. But as they worked together, laughing over failed attempts and enjoying the process, they realized how much fun it was to share new experiences. The hobby itself didn't matter as much as the joy of learning and growing together. A few months later, Mark had his routine checkup, and the doctor advised him to make some lifestyle changes for his heart health. He was reluctant at first, but Linda was determined. "We'll do it together," she reassured him. They started going for evening walks, switching to healthier meals, and even joined a yoga class for seniors. It wasn't just about staying fit. It became another way for them to bond. One morning, after a long walk, Mark looked at Linda. "You know, I actually feel better doing this." She smiled. "Told you so." Aging was inevitable, but facing it together made all the difference. Intimacy in their 50s wasn't the same as when they were young, but that didn't mean it was gone. It had transformed into soft touches, meaningful conversations, and a deeper emotional connection. One night, as they lay in bed, Linda whispered, "Do you ever miss the way things used to be?" Mark turned to her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I do, but I also love the way things are now." They had learned that intimacy wasn't just about passion. It was about presence, kindness, and making each other feel cherished every day. In their younger years, they had been too busy with work and raising kids to focus much on socializing. But now, they made an effort to reconnect with old friends and build new relationships. One weekend, they invited a group of friends over for dinner. The house was filled with laughter, stories, and the warmth of companionship. "We should do this more often," Linda said as she poured another glass of wine. Mark nodded. "Absolutely." Maintaining friendships helped them feel more connected to life beyond just the two of them, and it enriched their relationship in unexpected ways. One afternoon, Linda found Mark sitting in the garden, lost in thought. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, sitting beside him. He smiled. "The future." Linda raised an eyebrow. "Oh, and what does our future look like?" Mark took her hand. More adventures, more laughter, and hopefully, more years together. They had been through so much, but their love had only deepened with the time. No matter what lay ahead, they knew they would face it side by side. And that was the most beautiful part of their journey.